Welcome to the Cole Cast. I'm Nathan Brandt, co-founder of Cole Ironworks, and today we are finally joined by a guest. Today we're here with Coy Baker of Baker Forge and Tool.
What's up?
Can we get a little clap for Mr. Coy? Our first in-live person that's not Francis. Yeah, there we go.
Sweet.
So, Coy, I would love to talk to you about how you established your company. Mm-hmm. I would love to know all the pertinent details of how you got started with blacksmithing. You were just telling me that you dug a hole in your driveway and started forging. When you started forging, you were 12?
Yeah, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
What made you interested in it? Had you done anything leading up to that point that...
Leading up to that point, just hobby stuff. You know,
yeah.
I grew up with two brothers, both younger, but we would, build go-karts. We're always building forts out in the woods. Very big outdoors family.
Yeah.
We didn't have TVs or video games or anything growing up. Very, just if you're not doing school, I was also homeschooled. Yeah. So if you weren't doing school, you're outside screwing around, making stuff. So always working with my hands.
Did you find yourself being entrepreneurial young? Or did that come later?
I would say that came a little bit later. I didn't really set up any lemonade stands, hustles. I didn't really have a lot of hustles. It was more just the creativity in the mind.
Yeah.
Just building stuff. I just loved building things. And Zach, my middle brother, he's got the engineer brain.
Okay.
So he was always the engineer side of things, brainiac, figuring how things were going to work. And then I was always the one implementing.
Yeah.
Making it happen.
Yep.
And so we got interested in the blacksmithing stuff, seeing a friend who was doing some forging. Mm-hmm. He was in college. He was older at the time. And he was making some Lord of the Rings replicas and doing some really, looking back on it, it probably weren't amazing now that I'm in the industry. Right. But at the time, they were like, oh, my gosh.
That's never seen anything like that in person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's straight out of, Return of the King. Oh, my gosh, just geeking out over it. And so that just started the passion. It was before Forged in Fire, of course.
So yeah,
that wasn't around. And we didn't have a TV anyhow.
Right. So it wouldn't have mattered. No.
So just wanted to hit some hot steel.
Yeah.
And, the only way to do it was to build a hole in the ground and fill it full of coal,
Yeah.
The internet was around. It was a thing. Right. So we were able to do Google and research. There's limited info out there. Just searching through forums, whatnot.
iForge Iron.
iForge Iron. Tons of time on that. Yeah. Didn't have the money to go buy forges or anything. So we're like, what can we do with what we got? And a safe place to do it is in gravel. Catch the woods on fire, and just dug a hole. I had some white PVC pipe, which I ran to the base of it, which did not last long.
Nope.
Kept infeeding it as it burned up.
Right.
With my mom's old hairdryer at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I started, and just beat old files over rocks.
So did you once you said you were doing it for a hobby for a few years, you got into knife making, and you found, very similarly to me, that the forging was the part you wanted to stick with.
Yes.
And so how did you finagle your way into getting to do that?
So started making some knives. I was doing ornamental stuff too, just knickknacks. I was never selling any of this. It was always just a shop hobby and home. And the knife portion, I loved the forging, loved moving the material, and hated the finish work.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually ever sold a knife either. So it wasn't like I was making any money at it.
Right.
It's just a hobby, strictly. And just didn't like the finishing. And so I ended up with piles and piles of forged knives that never got finished because, it was done in my book. Fun's
Let's
over.
move on.
Yeah. So it just got to be how close could I get to finished with the forging.
Yep.
Because that's as far as I was willing to go.
Yeah.
So, which doesn't lend well to selling knives because they're not.
They're not finished. Yeah. So how did you get introduced to Jason, and how did that all start?
So I got introduced to Jason through a guy who ran a gun shop in my hometown of Boone, North Carolina.
Okay.
He knew Jason through Daniel Winkler.
Okay.
Winkler Knives.
Yep.
And so when I was, just working in the shop, I was posting some stuff on Instagram, early days of Instagram. I had 50 followers, you know.
Right.
But this friend of mine that owned the gun shop, he followed me and he was like, hey, he saw me doing a Damascus attempt.
Yeah.
You know, doing some pattern welding. And he's like, hey, you need to get hooked up with Jason Knight. And I was like, yeah, right. I mean, I'm a nobody. Jason Knight's big name.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I know him. I have his phone number. I just texted him your number. And I said, you need to call Coy. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, he's never going to call. A couple hours later, Jason Knight called me.
Yep.
And said, hey, you need to come out to the shop. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Here we go. And so, so I went out to Jason's, and that's when it really started taking off.
Yeah.
Because, you know, learning from somebody who's a master at their craft
right.
accelerates you from stage one exponentially.
Yeah.
The amount I learned, I think I went there twice, and by the time I had, you know, been there for 2 days, I was making Damascus like no man's business.
Yeah.
And it was just up from there.
Yeah.
I had a customer, I started selling Damascus bars.
Okay.
Very quickly transitioned into mosaics.
Yeah.
Because that's where the pattern development really ticked in my brain, and I loved that. So I did a lot of mosaic work, and we're selling those to folder makers and guys doing really high-end knives who didn't do forging,
right,
but wanted the mosaics.
Right.
At the time, you couldn't buy mosaic Damascus out there very much.
Sure.
I mean, Mike Norris, you know, there was a couple of smaller guys, but those guys aren't really big on the internet.
Right.
And they're not active on Instagram, social media. Those guys are older. It's not their thing.
Yeah.
And so when this kind of started taking off on the social media platforms, people started seeing the Damascus that they could buy. It started taking off.
Yeah.
And I had a customer ask me about the copper. And they said, hey, I don't remember what it was some special project he was working on with a lot of copper elements. He wanted copper in the blade. And I told him, that's a bad idea. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And he insisted. He said he was going to pay for the R&D for me to try it.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I'll give it a go. Promptly melted a bunch of copper in my forge and ruined it.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
But yes, that steep learning curve, but that's how that started. And once I developed a process for that, then it really just exploded. And I had more work than I could handle. I was working a full-time job at the time. I actually ran my own residential painting company.
Okay.
Painting and drywall.
So you were entrepreneurial. Like multifaceted.
Yes, but this is like 2019, you know. So we've scaled a long ways from driveway. You know, it was very much a hobby, and I did other stuff for work for years.
Yeah.
But the painting company we ran for quite a while with my dad and brothers. It was a family-owned painting company.
I love that.
Yeah, and it was super successful. We were super busy.
Yeah.
And then this started taking off, and I was like, shoot, here's a big potential in a craft I love doing.
Yeah.
I don't love painting. Who loves painting?
That's why you hire somebody to do it.
Exactly. And so it was just hey, you know what? I went to my dad and brothers like, hey, this might be something. Yeah. You know, we might actually have something here. What are your guys' thoughts on pivoting a little bit? And so I started backing off on my time a little bit at the painting company.
Yeah.
I was in just the management side. I wasn't swinging a brush.
Got it.
Bids, quotes, customer work, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I started doing less on the road bids and doing a little bit more at home and working in the shop more and making more steel.
Yeah.
Working nights and weekends doing it and really trying to scale it just to see how viable it was, testing the waters. And at the same time, kind of building some of my own tooling. I built my first 20-ton hydraulic press and my first rolling mill. My brother designed it with me, and we made that and just started seeing how it, you know, would this work?
Right.
You know. And it did. Yeah. It had legs, and so we ended up selling off the painting company entirely, and we moved over to Baker Forge. Yeah.
Wow. So you had significant family buy-in. Like they were right alongside you.
Yes.
Looking at this same opportunity, saying, "Oh yeah, let's move forward together."
100%.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Because I have 5 children. Mm-hmm. We homeschool. We live on a farm. We wanted to get away. And one of the things that I'm really curious about in your scenario, do you think you would have been able to get started if you didn't have them around you supporting you?
I think I could have. It would have taken longer.
Yeah.
It would have been significantly more difficult.
Right. Because you still identified the opportunity, right?
Correct.
But your ability to
implement,
to actually go and do was really stabilized. Because it's it can be really scary.
You're jumping into an abyss, to the unknown.
Right.
Because something this new, you don't know what kind of legs it actually has.
Right.
What the longevity, the timeline. I mean, that's all an unknown.
Right.
And then I get this question a lot from makers, when did you know to go full time?
Yeah.
And the beauty of my situation, which isn't, the case for a lot of people, is I had a full-time job.
Right.
And I was able to keep a steady paycheck income, even though I was backing off my hours.
Yeah.
Because I own the company.
Right.
And so I was able to pull from that resource-wise to keep my family fed.
Yeah.
While I started the other venture.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, so you said you and your brother were moving over to this. Was your dad a part of that, or was he kind of able to step out of the, you guys sell the company? Was he able to retire, or did he want to come along? Or
he did come along. So in the painting company, he had moved all the way back to just kind of the financial bookkeeper oversight of the painting company.
Right.
And so that was pretty much all he was doing with that business at that time. Right. And when we started doing this shift and I started doing more Baker Forge stuff, I brought him on to help with the back end, setting up the LLC, setting up the bookkeeping.
Of course.
All of that stuff that he was already really good at and has done before. Just taking stuff off my plate that I didn't need to do. And he's now staying on as a employee now. He's our CFO. So
that's
all the finance
fantastic.
side. Mm-hmm. So
you're able. So the three of you were the foundation. Like
three, yes. So Zach, the middle brother, doesn't currently work. He's an owner still.
Okay.
He doesn't work on a daily basis at Baker Forge.
Okay.
So starting off, he carried the paint company to the last minute.
Got it.
Myself and Jay pulled out first because I needed some help in the shop.
Yeah.
And so Jay was that first one. And then we actually made an immediate hire of a local friend who used to work for Winkler Knives. We brought him over from Winkler, and the three of us kind of steamrolled the production at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so Zach carried the paint company to the last bit. And then he had just gotten married, and they moved about an hour and a half south of us.
Okay.
And there was an amazing opportunity with his father-in-law who was starting up a completely different company.
Yeah.
And he ended up deciding that he was going to work over there with them and work for Baker Forge and just stay in advisory capacity.
Sure.
Because he has the engineering mind.
Right.
We still utilize a lot of that.
Of course.
But he was able to do that without having to be there every day.
Right.
So his day job is not at Baker Forge, but he is an owner and on board.
So the sale of the painting company, that all happened, you said, in 2019?
That was more like 2021.
Okay.
So 2019 was when I started officially making steel and selling it on Instagram.
Got it.
2020 is the foundation, is the actual
like founding date of
Baker Forge. Yeah, officially on paper according to the government.
So, I mean, what did your day-to-day look like during that period? Was just
hectic.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 jobs, full time.
Yeah.
So nights, weekends, everything. It was work nonstop. And luckily, both my kids at the time were very young.
Yeah.
And didn't require as much dad yet.
Right.
A lot of mom still.
Yeah.
And so it worked at that time.
Right.
It'd be a lot harder now to do that because my kids are older. But
I completely understand.
Yeah. So it was crazy. It was, and I had a lot of support from my wife. Not a lot of people can deal with that.
Oh yeah.
That kind of work hours is straining on life in general.
Huge.
Yeah.
Well, things just continue. Like life goes on. Like I would liken starting a business to going to prison. Like everything around you continues to move forward, and your list of to-dos continues to pile up. Yes. But it's like 110% of your focus is on this, and that's all that gets done. Like actually, problems are being solved on the daily.
Right.
And I think of that Johnny Cash song where he says, everyone just keeps on walking.
Yep.
I think I get that question a lot too. It's like, when did you know to move over? And for me, it was kind of like you said, there was just a fork in the road. It was literally like, well, just status quo. I mean, everything's still working that direction, but there was something within me that said, go this way. We had, when we started Cole, we were doing ornamental work. We were working for other fabrication shops and trying to fill in gaps for them where they didn't have the manpower or the resources to build their own pieces, and they didn't want to wait 6 months for an imported product to come in. So we would make that. And then we started getting into furniture and doing these other things. And so Andy built a press, and there was so much more immediate social media attention to the machine. We were like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So we took one to a show and we sold one. Okay. And then we sold another one and another one and another one. So that first year, after we developed the first 16 ton, 110 press, we sold like 10, maybe a dozen. And then the next year it was 100. And so it was like, Andy and I were looking at each other, and it's kind of similar to what you're saying. What is the actual longevity of this? Because how many blacksmiths are there?
Sure.
How many blacksmiths are there that need a press? And so all of a sudden, I would assume you're looking at like, how many knife makers are there? Right. How many knife makers aren't going to make their own material or, have no interest in forging? Because from my perspective, I got into I don't make knives. I will never be a knife maker, but I've made knives as just an aspect of blacksmithing. It's a whole different skill set. It's all intermingled.
Yep.
But yeah, there was just that period where like my wife, we only had one kid. My wife was able to continue working for consistent income. And then the work just continually picked up. And it does seem, I've talked to enough guys that have started companies at this point that it's like the moment that you turn the switch and you're doing it for real, it seems like the response and the opportunities just begin to blossom.
Yes.
It's like they're there the whole time,
right,
but you can't see them when you're boxed in that deep.
You didn't have the vision. You don't have the peripheral.
Exactly.
And I tell the guys, if they ask me, when will I know when should I go full time?
Yeah.
If you're asking me that question, you're not there yet.
Right.
Because you will come to that fork, as you mentioned. Right. Once you're at that fork,
Yeah.
Because it's
so obvious.
Pick one or the other.
Yeah. It's shattering to try to continue. It's like, if I continue to do both, somebody's
going to die.
Yeah, everything's going to fall apart. I'm mentally going to fall apart.
Correct.
So tell me about, you hire a local friend that had experience, you bring him into the fold. Tell me about hiring. Tell me about how that has been for you.
Hiring's fun.
Okay.
And I say that sarcastically.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
It's not the fun part.
No.
We've been very fortunate with the hiring. This industry specifically, because we're hiring people to forge steel, is very attractive.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to do it.
Right.
Most people can't.
Yeah.
Or don't understand the actual physical load
that
you have to go through on a day at Baker Forge.
Yeah.
Especially in the summer.
Yeah.
It's intense. And so we go through people. And normally it's pretty quick. The guys who are with us have been with us for a very long time. Because when you find the right one, they stick.
Yep.
And they fit in perfect and they know what's going on. But it's a hard work environment. Yeah. And so we started by hiring people kind of in association with people that we knew.
Yeah.
So that first friend, Cole, that we hired, he had a couple of buddies who also had some experience or had worked at Winkler.
Yeah.
And so we had some of those guys who came in and came over. And that's kind of some of the first employees were connections there.
Right.
Who we knew.
Yeah.
Outside of that, hiring now is just putting out a listing and seeing who bites and doing interviews. And Will, who's our head blacksmith now, he was from Alaska. He hit me up in an email. I was on a plane to Blade Show West, and he hit me up in an email. We had just put out a listing on Instagram. And that was our first guy who came from a distance.
Yeah.
And he was
quite a distance.
He's a knife maker. You know? And so Will's been amazing. Yeah. That was a great hire. He's going to be with us for a long time. I mean, we're locked in with him. So yeah. So hiring, it really hasn't been that hard, I guess, as far as finding people, because a lot of people are attracted to it.
Right.
Forged and Fire, brought a lot of this
huge
industry to the surface.
Right.
It brought a lot of knife makers to the surface, which became customers.
Right.
Which helped a lot.
Right.
So it hasn't been terribly hard to find people. It's been a little harder to retain them.
Yeah.
More just because the work ethic out there is, the modern day work ethic is pretty low. And
yes. I mean, I've had people, we brought a guy in, this was a couple months was last year sometime. He literally came in, worked one day, and came up to Francis at the end of the day, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this." I think it was like probably 100-degree day. Like everybody's hot, everybody's just trying to get it done, and we're not even forging here, but everything's adjacent. Your parts come in hot, and you're dirty, and everything will cut you, and it's just like
it's still grimy. It's all.
It takes a certain kind of person.
Yep.
For sure. And we've had, so when Andy and I, our very first hire was a friend of a friend, and we brought him in, and he was fantastic. We hired him because we knew him, and it was all easy and good. And then our second hire was a local guy, kind of down on his luck, just looking for something to put his hands to. And that started, I saw the business opportunity kind of adjacent to a ministry opportunity where I could open this, I could train anybody. If you'll come in and buy in and try, like I can bring you along for the ride.
Sure.
What happened as a result of that, though, was we started hiring out of trade schools. We were hiring people that were, struggling to get back on their feet or out on a work release program, or like just trying to bring the community in a way that we wanted to help and develop and give them an opportunity.
Sure.
The problem was that we ran up against immediately was that neither Andy or I had significant management experience, meaning none. Andy had some more than I did. He ran a fab shop down in Tennessee, some like adjacent to Nashville. So, when we started Cole, we started doing the ornamental work initially because he called me and he was like, "Dude, we are shipping $1 million a week, and I have 6 people with stick welders and angle grinders." He's like, wow. Now Nashville is such the development, as far as ornamental ironwork and stuff goes, like that was such a sweet spot. They were just blowing up. Everybody needed balcony railings, and they were just cooking.
Market was right.
And so, we thought that was going to be it, because we had a stick welder and an angle grinder. But that started a lot of turmoil. And what's funny about what you said was we've basically turned the corner recently, and we've started now hiring a lot more like people we know, like Greg that was just in here. He grew up with Andy. He grew up with Francis. Like he's been a diesel mechanic for almost 30 years. Like dude's a brilliant, hardworking mind, but we weren't looking in that pool. We were trying to no, we need to be really focused on bringing in the community. And because we didn't have those management tools and I didn't have that experience, God, it was like open season. Right. It was just like I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. So, a lot of school of hard knocks. We had a lot of turnover as we figured out, people, I can't just bring someone in and put them on a mill from 1958 and train them even. Like we have to get so much background, nuanced experience. Like I've hired people that have never swung a hammer. And what I found is there's a huge divide in somebody that is accurate with a hammer and somebody that's never swung one. Sure. Like there's a whole neural network where they know how to turn the dials and what the feedback of the machine if you don't have any of that, then maybe I can't train you.
So obviously when we're looking for a hire, there's not people out there that have the experience already.
Right.
Using a power hammer, a giant press, and a rolling mill.
Right.
That are not out there.
Yeah.
So those have to be trained.
Right.
So what I look for is some sort of shop experience.
Yes.
Because what you're talking about, that feel of the machine, that it being somewhat, even if they don't know how to run it great,
right,
they have a knowledge of how it operates.
Right. When you can pose questions, what do you think? What do you think's going on? And their response will either be complete nonsense. It's like, well, I think the spindle drive isn't working properly. It's like, brother,
this doesn't even have a spindle. No, this is a hydraulic machine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and the other thing, we ran well, we still do. Like we have a beautiful saw, but it's feeding material into a bunch of, like we have a 2022 saw feeding a bunch of like 1989 CNC machines, right? So
sure. I saw that.
When you go with that older stuff, like there's even more tactile. We used to run some old auto feed saws, and I went through 5 operators, and I'm talking about these guys were going through 3 blades a day.
Whoa.
And these blades are $140 a piece. And you know, I'm trying to teach them, and it's just like the second I got Nigel in there. Now, Nigel's background is in leatherworking, but he's used to running turn of the century leatherworking equipment, saddle sewer machines. And so he's so in tune. I think the longest runtime we've had is like 12 weeks on a single saw blade running full production.
That's what he was telling me, because I asked him how long the saw blades last. Yeah, and when he told me, I was like, "Well, that's
it's a point of pride because but I just didn't understand that you have to have some. I mean, I grew up. My pastime as a kid was my grandpa would give me a box of nails and a 4x4, and he's like, "I don't want to see any wood." It's like, you know, and I I didn't know that nobody else grew up like that, or not very many. So, okay, so you're hiring from your local. How many guys do you have in the shop right now?
We've got about 12 employees company wide now.
So very similarly sized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still able to be out there regularly forging, or are you ending up?
Unfortunately not.
Yeah.
I had to give that up as part of the growth and scaling of the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have an office that I spend most of my time in. Yep. Phone calls, emails, that sort of thing.
But it sounds like your earlier experience has been probably hugely helpful.
Oh, yes.
Like running the paint company from that side. You're basically doing similar, I would assume.
The customer side, very much similar, yes. I don't call myself a salesman, but I'm pretty decent at it.
Yeah.
I can sell. And currently, I don't really have much in the way of salesmen, so I do the selling.
Right.
So I really haven't had to go out and look for clients. I mean, it's been very organic.
Yeah.
We did a lot on social media. We had a heavy presence on there from day one.
Yeah.
Of course, Instagram's kind of nuked now. Doesn't really do anything. Yeah. So it's somebody looks at the page. Oh, you got a lot of followers. It's like, yeah, that doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's only a fraction of see anything.
Crazy.
It's low. So that doesn't really mean anything. But we've got a great network of bigger companies using us now, and that's so we went from 95% all direct to custom knife makers and working in their shops, like a single guy.
Right.
To it's now flipped. And now a good 85 to 90% of our work is all to big companies.
Yeah.
Or to resale
looking for material they can't get anywhere else.
Correct.
Yeah.
Companies like Microtech and Half Face and Benchmade, those kind of companies.
Yeah.
So we do a lot with them, and so it's flipped, which was necessary for scale and growth.
Yeah, of course.
Those orders are the ones that are going to really help us scale.
Right.
Selling one bar at a time, you can only go so far.
Right.
So we still do a lot of catering, and if anybody who followed us on Instagram for a while never saw that switch.
Yeah.
Because we always do a drop of steel every week for the website for those guys.
Right.
And we'll always maintain that because those makers are who got us to where we're at now.
Right.
They brought us up. So, but all the scaling and growth we've gone through has all been to build up for the commercial side.
Yeah. How did you feel like you on purpose flipped that switch, or was that also organic? Those companies started to come in the door.
They did start coming into the door.
Yeah.
And when I noticed that, I pushed it.
Yeah.
Because it's really when we started getting into our new building. Yeah. The big drive was, hey, we've got some of these commercial accounts starting to come in. Yep. I want to push into this, but I don't have the capacity to put a new production line in the building we're in.
Right.
So we need to expand. And as soon as that expansion happened, I then really kind of pushed hard on that.
Yeah.
And started really wanting to get those bigger guys in. So I went from my single car garage to a 3,000 square foot shop that I co-rented with a knife maker. Shout out to Josh Morgan, Primitive Woodsman. We rented that space together. He's a longtime friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's a full-time knife maker. He's actually doing amazing stuff now. He took over that whole building when we moved, but neither of us needed all that space to start.
Right.
But there's so much limited commercial real estate in our area, which probably in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
There's not much out there.
Right.
And so this popped up, and neither of us could afford all of it.
Right.
So I was like, hey, let's split it.
Yeah.
And we'll just share the shop. There's 2 bay doors. You get one bay, and I get the other bay. Yeah, I filled that entire place up in like 6 months.
Yep.
And we started running out of room quick.
Yeah.
And obviously, I can't push Josh out because he just moved in there with me.
Right.
So we got hampered in there. We were on top of each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
Just, trying to make it happen and grow as best we could.
Right.
Rearrange the machines a little bit to gain an extra 2 foot.
Right.
2 square feet.
It all
space.
matters at that point.
It all matters.
Yeah.
And then the opportunity came up for this building that was not even on the market. Our local town chamber of commerce.
Yep.
We're buddies with some of those guys. We're hooked up with them, and they let us know of this building that was going to be on the market. It was empty and ready to sell.
Yeah.
And we were able to swoop in there and get that before it went to the market.
Yeah. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you said that's about 10,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. So how do you set a lot of that up as far as like layout? How do you guys handle that?
Like the machines?
Yeah, like setting the machines up and the process flows and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. So I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Process flows. I mean, I geek out over that stuff.
Yeah.
So when we bought the place and we were going to be moving, I was just so giddy.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to set up a new process. Let's get this flow. And so me and Jay, my brother, Jay's the shop manager. He runs everything on the shop floor.
Got it.
And so me, him, and Cole, who's kind of our engineer / mechanic, we sat down, sketched it all on paper, and then went into the shop and started marking out on the floors and walking the distances between where the machines would be and moving this one a little bit. And so just spent a bunch of time doing that while the building was dead empty.
Right.
Just at night after the main shop was closed. And yeah, I mean, I don't have any training in that. It's more of here's what we were using, and here's, we know this is the stage of the steps that needs to happen, and so what the arrangement needs to be to fit that.
Right.
And of course, we're going into way more space, almost 4 times more space.
Yeah.
And so it felt like massive empty warehouse. It's like, well, we could put a machine way over there if we wanted to. We have tons of space, but it takes like 3 minutes to get there if you walk. Yeah. So. That was super fun.
Did you do any reading on the subject when you were trying to amass your knowledge on like how to set up production flows and things like that? Or did you just raw experience?
Just raw.
Just raw dogging it. Is that a swear word? My 9-year-old says it. So I should probably stop saying that. Yeah. Okay. Noted.
I almost said it right before you did it. Like, you know what? That one might not flow. I'd hate for editor man to have to go back.
It's really bad. Most of the time he's editing. If our friend Kurt visits, it's F-bombs, and if it's Francis, it's just like choking and gagging noises constantly throughout the podcast. Just a lot of phlegm. So when we were in our 1,000 square foot shop, like you said, we were trying to maximize every square inch. And we just had a First Friday meeting, and I was reminiscing about, I have a video somewhere. Every morning we would go in, start the coffee, turn all the lights on, get the air compressor running, and then we would turn on, we had a 1964 Clark and a 1967 Heister or something like that. So we'd get those, turned on, and then we would have to pull all of the pallets of in-process material out the back, set it in the parking lot, park the forklifts out so we could get to the machines to start running production for the day. And so, same vein, I found it like it was even more fun than building stuff was like setting up machines and seeing how people could like flow through process and see the material flow through. And, that shop in particular, though, we would have like people sharing welding tables, which turns out is a terrible idea because everybody gets super burned.
Yes.
So we were sharing welding tables. So you're grinding on each other. We had one instance where we hired a young woman, and proceeded to wrap herself in a wire wheel 3 times in a row within a 10-minute section. And I finally took it from her, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have you do something else. Unfortunately, the something else was I put her on a mill, and then a massive. So we bought a Series 2 Bridgeport. Are you familiar with Series 1, Series 2?
A little bit.
So Series 1 are traditional knee mills.
Correct.
Series 2 are industrialized, power feed everything. Instead of a 2 horsepower motor, it's got a 5 horsepower spindle motor. It used these NMTB collet systems. So every time they would come up for sale, you can't buy them. So every time they come up for auction or whatever, I'd just buy
Scoop them.
Hundreds. We would have like 10-inch face mills and stuff, which is way too big. I couldn't use those. I tried, but I stalled the spindle motor. So, anyway, I also, cause like for me, I grew up building things. I found it way more fun to build things. That's a small one. That's a very small one.
Yeah, but it's the industrialized version.
It's the industrialized version, full cabinet in the back with a crazy, like wiring schematic thing that you've got to deal with regularly. But we, as the company started to grow and I found myself less, beveling plate and welding, which I initially loved. That was like my whole passion. I had never welded when we started the company. I had blacksmithed for years, but I didn't have a welder. So we had some press frame issues because I didn't know what I was doing. And so the way that I deal with problems like that is I bought every single book on welding. I downloaded the AWS manual, proceeded to just like memorize it. But for me, that motivating factor was like problem solving is what I found it kind of devolved into, was as the company scaled, my true passion became problem solving.
Yes.
Like I feel like the blacksmithing was fun. I painted, I did carpentry, I built buildings. That was all fun. But it was like all that was teaching me was this baseline problem solving ability. And I think people that are entrepreneurial all share that similar trait. It's never like the business is interesting, the work is exciting and fun, but I think of it like it's really just constant problem solving.
Sure, because every day there's a new problem.
Every day.
Yeah, especially if you're growing.
Right.
There's always something else to solve. And I say I didn't read a bunch of books on that specific, setting up a production line, because we had a flow in the old shop.
Yeah,
that we're mimicking off of, just on a different scale. But I'm a major researcher.
Yeah.
If something pops in my head, I'm on YouTube, I'm on the forum, anything, I'm researching it like crazy.
Yeah.
To learn every single aspect about it.
Right.
Before I started.
Well, it gives you tools in your toolbox, What I've found really interesting too was I started delving into like the history of production, of course, Henry Ford and Toyota, and like some of a lot of that information has now been modernized into like Six Sigma programs and these like really complicated architecture of, well, here's how you like route problems through the bureaucracy and stuff like that. I hate all that. Sure. We tried to implement that. We did a Six Sigma thing. I paid for employee training, all this stuff. Complete waste of time. What I found to be valuable was when I went back to the originators of it, so Toyota has a production system called TPS. The foundation of it, though, was Taiichi Ono was their general manager of their production shop. He was faced with the problem of post-World War II, they had no resources, no men, nothing. They had no capital. And so they had a building and a few machines. And he had to start up an entire automotive line. And so the very first truck that came out of the Toyota plant following World War II had one headlight and one set of brakes, because that's all they could afford to put on it. They didn't have the actual production processes in place, further up the line to build the stuff.
Right.
And so again, it's that problem solving. It's like looking at how they were met with obstacles. With Henry Ford, something that people don't even think about now is they had no power. There was no centralized power grid. So his first problem to solve was to design and build steam turbine generators that would power his factories. If you care about things like this at all, you have to go to the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit. I've been there twice. And we're planning a third trip. It's 2 large parcels. One of it was developed by Henry Ford, and then later, I think it's called Greenwich Village. They went and they have Thomas Edison's actual lab, and they picked it up and put it in Greenwich. They've got the Wright brothers original mechanic shop, and they picked it up and brought it and said, I mean, like, and they have everything. They have their tools, their notebooks, and it's all there right in front of you. And you get to walk and look at this stuff. And it's awesome. But in the Henry Ford Museum, they had, they had 12 turbines that they built themselves that powered the factory. They had 12 of them, and he immediately took one offline and put it in the museum. He's like, this is going to be important one day. Wow. And so you walk in, the turbine is way bigger than this room. And it's fastidious. Like every bolt and nut is polished and hand filed. And like, I mean, you're talking about this stuff was being built when they were figuring out how to measure. Right. Like there was no standardized measurement system. And so it's just like, that's where I get really excited, because it goes back to, they were solving problems that we don't even like at this point. We're so spoiled. Like technology it's just ridiculous, you know. It's like you have a question, hey ChatGPT, I feel like a blob in comparison to these guys that were literally, I mean, John Deere was a blacksmith that just like figured it out, you know? And so, I get really excited about that, because I think what it does is it speaks to the true spirit of being entrepreneurial and building a business. It's just like, it's the most creative experience imaginable. It's just in really surprising ways. It's like, hey, I can't figure out how to fill the mop bucket. Well, let's figure it out. Let's like come up with a process for it, you know?
And if you don't find that super rewarding,
don't scale a business.
Then you can't do it.
No.
Yeah. You're not going to make it.
No, because it's exhausting.
Yeah.
In every conceivable, emotionally, spiritually,
all of them, all the ways.
So you're developing this really interesting product line. Are you in charge of product development? Like, I know you said you're mostly dealing with sales, but because you have that, like, do you have a guy that you work with while you guys are developing patterns and products and that kind of stuff?
I do, yes. Yeah. So initially it was just me.
Yeah.
And then as we've kind of scaled, I've got 2 guys who work on pattern development with me.
And that's their like full time. Like
no. These are just they're actually knife makers.
Yeah,
because I need feedback from a knife maker.
Right.
We don't make any knives.
Right.
I need somebody to tell me who's using this product.
Yeah.
I need feedback from that.
Right.
And so that plays a part in designing new patterns.
Right.
And so those 2 knife makers I talk to on every single day.
Yeah.
On conference calls, talking with them through all kinds of different ideas and whatnot. We are looking to bring an in-house actual product development specialist.
Yeah.
In fact, we have a guy we've pitched an offer to.
Yeah. That's exciting.
And I think a lot of people would actually know who he is, but I'm not going to say who the name is. Yeah, this will be our first actual, what do you call it? Skill hire.
Yeah.
Specific skill hire. He's coming in with everything he needs already.
Yeah.
And
probably things you don't have.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Well, most of it up here.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
All up in the head. So we're very excited about that. Hopefully this summer. If it happens, it'll happen this summer.
Very cool.
Very excited about that. And Haley's going to help spearhead the entire stainless line, getting that to full capacity.
Whoa.
So I'm tooling for that now. That's why I'm here in Indiana, because I was up at Ohio at Yoder Machinery.
Oh, shout out Yoder Machinery.
Shout out to Cody, my boy. I just bought a whole 2 trucks. Of machines.
Yeah.
So we're tooling up big time
fantastic
to get that rolling. So.
So in this development process, are you looking at these equipment purchases? Like, do you have a clear vision, or are you just trying to buy up some capacity to bring in-house?
No, this is to add to make the production line.
So you're looking at what you already have and you're saying, I need this, but
better,
bigger, faster, stronger.
Correct.
Yeah.
And a couple of these machines are going to also help facilitate on the carbon copper line that we currently do. That is going to help, scale there a little bit too. But most of it's for the stainless side, because stainless steel is just a whole different bear when it comes to forging, because everything has to be bigger, beefier, and stronger.
Right.
Because it's so much harder to forge. It's like forging rocks.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. We had a company call us. They were forging a platinum carbide mix.
Oh.
And I heard platinum. I'm thinking precious metal, it's got carbide in it, but this will be easy. I mean, we put it in each press model. We tried it on hammers. My 120 could barely forge an 1.5 inch round. Barely.
Whoa.
I mean, it was like, and we were having cracks and fractures. And so what they do is they forge this huge raw ingot. And they, from the sound of it, it's just platinum and carbide powder. And it forms this spongy, weird mass, but it's not homogeneous. And they have to homogenize it because they pull it into wire. And so... Oh my gosh, and they initially were like, well, can we send you some billets? I said, absolutely not. Like, I don't want that in my shop. Are you kidding me?
What were they needing you guys for?
Well, so what they do is they specialize in the drawing process. And they were losing access, whether the company was shutting down. I don't remember, but they were trying to bring in-house, breaking that raw ingot down.
Gotcha.
And they were like, we have no idea what we're looking for. And so I said, why don't you guys personally come? We'll set every machine up that we offer and we'll just try some things. And what we found was, it was like, you couldn't forge it with anything other than a 120. And, you had to knead the material in a certain process to homogenize it before you started straining it. I mean, it was super intense. Wow. Yeah. We ruined a $25,000 billet and it was like this big. I mean, it was just like,
that's expensive.
Yeah. But he said, he was like collecting the dust and he's like, yeah, we'll just remelt it. Like, so they had the melting process in-house already. They had the drawing process, but they had to bring in the like forging process.
Yep.
So, that's my only experience. I, you know, with Logan being here, we've played with stainless in the shop, but every single time I'm just like, I just don't want to do this. This is just obnoxious. Ridiculous.
Yes.
Even at forge welding temperature, it's still obnoxious.
It is. Yes. So and it looks the exact same, but actually.
But it's not.
No. So different. The first time we started running some, prototyping patterns and setting up our process, a year ago.
Yeah.
The guys were put it under the hammer, started forging, and they're like, what?
It's not moving.
What's wrong with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we have brought in a Chambersburg high frame, 750-pound ram to move some steel.
That'll move some steel.
14x6 bottom die.
So you're setting all this equipment up. Are you... I mean, a machine like that needs a massive foundation. So where it goes, it stays.
Oh, yeah.
So are you thinking about like shop expansion, or is all this stuff that you're bringing in going to be able to fit right into your current production?
It'll fit right in. Yeah. So we have a current production line on one side of the shop, and then directly next to it, the second line is going in. And we had already planned on that being another line.
Yeah.
There's nothing over there yet right now other than the foundation.
Yeah.
So all those machines are going to fit right in just fine.
Yeah.
At the very end of the wall where the production line ends, the company before us was a manufacturer of furniture.
Okay.
And they had their spray paint booths.
Yep.
Against the wall.
Yep.
And we retrofitted those, and we put our furnaces and forges into those spray booths and used the air system to suck the residual heat off and blow it out the building.
Yeah.
So it keeps it from getting too terribly. I mean, it still gets hot, but
well, of course,
it could be worse.
It could be way worse.
Way worse. And
so how are you? I mean, when you're looking at the next 10 years, are you like, do you have a plan, or are you more responsive to kind of what the market, like, how do you think about leading the company in that way?
I'm not opposed to, I'm always listening to the market.
Yeah. Right.
If changes happen and we need to morph with the market, I'm always flexible there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anybody who would be rigid to that point is dumb.
Yeah.
You got to be able to flex.
Right.
What's cool is the tooling and machinery we've amassed and the production line we have. We could make all kinds of things.
Right.
We don't have to make what we're making now.
Right.
It could be a production line for a lot of variety of
just
parts
products.
Or products. Yeah.
Right.
So, that's cool because there's a lot of flex there.
Right.
The building we bought is on enough land. We've got room to put in another building, an even bigger building if we wanted to.
Yeah.
So there's manufacturing space to grow.
Yeah.
And I would see us getting into more manufacturing, more into the CNC milling stuff for some more product.
Right.
More final product that actually utilize our material we make.
Right.
Because we literally just make raw material.
Right.
For everybody listening, it's just the raw material.
Yeah.
A lot of people think we make knives because there's knives on Instagram on our website. But we have to showcase the material to market it. So it's got to become a knife. But we don't make any knives. But there's a lot of products out there that you could make with our material that would be final end products that we could manufacture.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of vision for future down the road in-house manufacturing for a lot of those.
Well, you've got the pieces, right? You've got all the way from the back end office all the way to shipping,
right.
And even a shipping department is a miraculous addition. Like,
yes.
I remember when we first started, we didn't have a dock. We had no access to a dock, so we would palletize a press. I would coax my forklift to life. I bought my first forklift from an Amish scrapyard. And if you know anything about the Amish, if it's in the scrapyard, it is really scrap.
It's roasted.
It is roasted.
Yes.
And so I pull up to this guy's scrapyard. So again, entrepreneurial dude. He had his house and his 9 children and like 70 cats that were all missing legs.
Oh.
They don't wear shoes in the scrapyard. So he's walking around with these like 3-inch thick feet. I have no idea how you do that, but he's walking around and he's like, I think it's over there. So we walk over and we get it started and he gets on it. And I had never driven a forklift at this point. He throws it in reverse, slams into a brand new chisel plow, probably a $60,000 chisel plow, smashes into it. Oh, oops. And throws it back. And anyway, so we coax that to life. We would palletize a press. We would fork it onto the back of my truck. I would drive 45 minutes to another company that I was friends with, and they would let me use their dock, and I would drop it on their dock, and then they would ship it out they would back the truck up and put it on the truck for me. But I remember when we got our first building and I was able to just drive the forklift around and put it in the truck, I walked in and looked at Andy and I was like, this is a new era.
Game changer.
This is crazy. But you just don't realize, I mean, at this scale where we're at now, we're shipping dozens and dozens and dozens of parcels a week. It takes a whole infrastructure just to like pack it and get the correct label and make sure the right parts are going in the right box.
It is. That's a whole nother process setup outside of the manufacturing.
And it's hugely important.
It is. And so obviously painting company, there's no product to ship.
That's a good
So that was
point.
brand new.
Yeah, right.
Getting into the packaging side of things was crazy. And we're still kind of working through setting
of course.
that. And that's a ever evolving.
Right. Well, as you add new products and now you're shipping, I'm assuming you're shipping like pallets of material to the larger companies. And
exactly. And going to shipping freight. I mean, I'd never shipped freight before. That was scary. Who do I call to pick up a pallet? I have no idea.
How do I even get started?
Yeah.
Right.
I literally asked my UPS guy once.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. I was like, hey, so who do I call if I need to ship a pallet? Because I don't even know.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know. I pick up boxes, bro.
Yeah.
So to get into shipping pallets was fun. But it's actually easier.
Oh, it's way easier.
It's way easier.
Yeah. We got one box, and it's big, and it's hard to break, and it goes to one place. Right. And then all the material gets distributed on their end.
Right.
Afterwards. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Much easier to do freight.
So, Coy, tell me about your favorite machines. I'm assuming you have a few.
Yeah.
Like what have become the real pillars of your company, machine-wise?
Machine-wise, probably the biggest pillar is the rolling mill.
Yeah.
So obviously we roll a lot of plate.
Right.
And it needs to be a universal thickness.
Right.
So the rolling mill, we struggled getting rolling mills that worked back in the day, starting up. I made my first one.
Right.
And you literally had to put the billet through like 30 times to get it down to what you needed to do. It took forever.
Yeah.
But you couldn't.
Was that like a McDonald's style, like where you apply pressure with your foot while it's running?
No.
It wasn't even that?
No, it was a motor on a gearbox, reduced drive, up torque,
Yeah.
Just 2 I-beams to create a little H-frame.
Right.
Some roll rod and a gear drive. I mean, it was just basic as it gets.
Sure.
I put a VFD on it because it was a 3-phase motor, and I was able to put it in reverse that way.
Oh, sure.
It was a cheap, easy way to do that.
Right.
And so started there, but we had to get scale from that quickly.
Yeah.
So we tried a couple of different rolling mills. I'm not going to name one of the ones that we got in with that were making rolling mills and loved the concept, and it didn't happen. It's terrible. Just so much pain. Anyway, when we move into the new building.
Yeah.
We had the space. I was like, all right, we're going to get a real rolling mill.
Yeah.
And I started shopping around. And that's when I got connected with Yoder
up
here. And he had a massive rolling mill.
Yeah.
It's 16 feet long.
Yep.
And the working area, it's a 12-inch wide.
Okay.
By 12-inch diameter rollers. So it's not a very big work area.
Right.
But it is a massive roller.
Is a lot of that length just for the drive shafts?
No,
for the rollers?
It's just for the motor and the gearbox.
Got it.
The gearbox wouldn't fit in a full-size pickup truck. It's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's huge, and it's a cold roller.
Okay.
So that's why, I mean, it's extra beefy.
Yeah.
It's on a monolithic base. It's all one piece.
Sure.
But we can roll mild steel in there just cold. We rolled a piece of 1-inch round bar, mild, cold, through it, and I believe it was 6 passes. We took it to 60 thousandths thick. And it came out smoking hot at the end.
Wow. That's got some girth.
Crazy power.
What's the horsepower on that?
The motor horse is 50.
Okay, but it's geared, so it's infinite
geared.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no manual for this thing.
Sure, of course not.
I don't even know how old it is.
Yeah.
There's not much data out there.
Right.
There's suspicions that it came off of a battleship tender.
Okay.
Because of the way it's painted and the way the cover guards are on it. My uncle was a commander in the Navy. And when he came to the shop tour.
Yeah.
He took one look at that machine and said, "That's painted with Navy paint."
Yeah.
And it makes sense because, I mean, of course, a lot of machines have spots for you to bolt the machine down. Mm-hmm. But the way it's on a mono base, and it has giant, oversized bolt mount spots.
Okay.
All along it.
Yeah.
Unnaturally so. And he said that's exactly how it would be set up in a battleship tender, because they would bolt those machines down to a boat, to a ship. And so I can't confirm that, but that was the suspicion. Because I've never seen one like it.
Sure.
The Yoder, the guy we bought it from, he had no history on it.
Right.
It had been in and around the warehouses for years and years and years.
Well, how many companies? I mean, that's kind of the issue with the industry. It's like the industry that I'm sitting in, where I'm selling forging equipment. Like, we are at such a tiny scale. I mean, you go 1 minute farther, and like the industrialized, Ajax presses and stuff. You're talking about 750-ton toggle presses to forge these tiny little things. Right. But when you need that to be so dimensionally accurate in every, like, you just make the machine 3 stories tall and put a 50 horsepower motor on. It's just like, it's just what you do. That's the next step. So there is a plethora of industrial surplus as industry. We'll call it reformed. As industry crumbled, I'm thankful that places like Yoder exist. We have several. I mean, there's Yoder Brothers, HGR. Like, we have lots.
There's our bunch
right around us.
Yes.
But you walk into these facilities, and it's just like, it almost makes me want to cry, because you know that this is a whole history and lineage. I was up at Dake talking with the old owners of Dake, and they were talking about how one of the things that happened towards the end of their company was they got a contract for, I'm probably not supposed to say any of this, but whatever. They got a contract to build, I don't remember the manufacturer name, but it was large boring mills. Mm-hmm. And I have a picture in our break room of a boring mill shop from Saugatuck, Michigan, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, there's a really cool museum up there too. They got the contract to make these large boring mills, and the specification were that, the waves were ground and flaked, what is it? Scraped. Thank you.
Yep.
Scraped and flaked. And they had one guy, and it would take him 3 weeks by himself full time to scrape one.
Oh.
And so he was trying to train up additional scrapers.
Yeah. Not a skill you need anymore.
It's so not a skill, but basically they said we couldn't. We couldn't find people that were willing to come in and learn this process and then sit and scrape for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. And so as that contract started to come up and they were needing to get product out the door, they couldn't do it.
Right.
They couldn't make them. And then they had a very similar contract come up where they were making these massive train wheel presses, so they would press the wheels on and off. But it had to manipulate the wheel and the axle to align them. I mean, you're talking about, it's like in the floor 8 feet. Like, these are monstrous pieces of equipment.
Right.
And they made one.
Wow.
And so he said basically what had happened was, you have the industrial base dries up, all these people go and get day jobs. They still have to support their family, but the connection point that they had to the knowledge and experience base vanished within 5 years.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't hire anybody with that knowledge. And then the knowledge started to go away. And all of a sudden you have this complete underpinning of the entire industrial base. And that's just a snapshot of one company.
For sure.
But they've been around for 137 years.
Right.
So they saw the full, like when you go to their and walk through and look at their museum and stuff, like they started as a brass foundry. What's the sextant? What did they make? It was like the backup main wheel for a ship. Okay, so if something happened to the captain, they would have this secondary control box, and it was all brass, beautifully finished.
Wow.
It's not a sextant. That's like a measuring tool. I can't remember what they're called, but they had one in their front office. But they went from brass foundry to foundry, and then they were casting press frames and machining everything in-house to, when Bob, who had been with the company for like 60 years, took us to the original factory. Full crane rail, everything's laid out. Like it's just, the scale of industry was huge, but the knowledge base was everything. And you had engineers that had actually built cast iron, like they had designed cast iron to be poured. And so that they understood the nuances. They weren't just designing a block. What is it called?
I don't know.
Well, that's not very helpful. Anyway, it was jarring to sit with somebody that has walked through this entire timeline that we're discussing and say, I don't know what's going to happen. It's gone. Like everything we learned, those guys are gone. And so I ended up going to breakfast with a bunch of those guys, and they were telling me stories. So in that factory, in the original factory, they had a Ingersoll Rand Type 10 Imperial duplex air compressor. And this machine had a 6-foot, 125 synchronous DC motor on it.
Whoa.
And that was just what provided air for the factory. And when I went, the guys were like, let's go look. And so we went back to the plant, and he started showing me how... So that machine was built in 1949. It lasted until 1990 or whatever it was. And then basically the entire electrical board died. And so they had one of their in-house engineers design the entire electrical system. They had to like main feed this from the power plant down the street. Like the capability of problem solving is like
back to problem.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it. So they told me that if I wanted it, I could have this machine. I still to this day, 2 years later, have not figured out how I would get it out of that factory. But it has a 14-inch intake, and it's solid cast iron up to the 35-foot roof deck. Like one piece of continuous 14-inch diameter. It's just like, and then it's it also has a cooling tower. But the cooling tower didn't work, so we just built our own. And they have this again, it's just like problem solving at a scale, but they had the tools and the experience of time.
Right. It's so sad to see so much of that go by.
No, but it's so imperative that people like you and I say, no, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. That's right.
Because yes, a lot of that information is gone, but we do have access to information like nobody else has ever had.
An historical amount. Yeah.
Literally. It's just... There are times that I've been, we'll come up against a problem. Like when we bought our first CNC machine, I felt like I was staring at a chasm of stupidity. It's like, I don't know what to do with this thing.
That's what I felt like when I was looking at yours out there.
Well, but then I had a guy that's been doing this for 50 years. He runs a shop over in New York. Andy and I popped over there. He's got a whole team of Amish guys that sit by these old CNCs and run incredibly complicated parts. They were interpolating... What was it? It was a natural gas compressor piston, and it has all these chasms and stuff in it because it has to compress the natural gas at a certain velocity. And I don't know. I'm just making up words.
Okay.
But it's just the little old Amish dude sitting there smoking his pipe, running this incredibly complicated part. And I was like, I'm in the right place.
That's cool.
And everywhere in his little factory, if one of the air compressor died, air compressors died, they would just push another air compressor in front of it and plug that one in. So there would be like 3 air compressors, like the history of the company.
Right.
But he showed us the basics, and he had the largest Fadal ever produced. These things were so big and that's what he was training us on. He's like, if you can do it in this, you can do it in any of them. But you have to climb up onto you go up a ladder and climb onto the table of the mill and put your tool in the tool. I think it was a 50 taper, or some variation of. Anyway,
that's big. That's a big mill.
It's big, and but he's entrepreneurial. He was a super interesting guy. The machine shops, a lot of the machine shops in his area had closed, so he'd take on all their work. Well, that work also started to slow down because a lot of the big factories moved away. So he was like, okay, we'll pivot. I've already got the machines. So they started making cabinets. He's got a whole team of carpenters that are running his CNC machines. They started using them as routers and making CNC'd cabinet faces. And so he put up a little pole barn in the back, and they started building cabinet boxes, and now he's got a whole nother company.
It's just another coming back to the pivoting.
Exactly.
Taking opportunities.
Well, and looking at what you have, I have a certain amount of capacity. Now, they had really big mills, so it was easy for them to just throw a sheet of plywood in there. I would have problems with that. Yeah. But it was so cool to see that he was seeing his market change. And so he was like, well, I've already got all this. You've got a rolling mill, you've got power hammer, you've got the equipment, you've got the people that can run them. You just need to say, hey, now we're going to make crowbars, and it's just one little click over.
One little click over. And it would just me meeting the right person who said, hey, you know what? I've been wanting to, trying to find somebody to make this, and be like, well, I can do that raw forging like that.
Absolutely.
We could crank out hundreds of these.
Right.
And then
solve that problem for him.
Now we're in a new industry.
Right.
And we can utilize almost all of our setup.
But you just got to keep your head above water so that you can keep looking around and
always be looking, always be open. Yeah.
Right.
Open-minded.
Yeah.
And problem solving. Those are the two biggest things.
Absolutely. That's everything. It's the whole foundation.
Too many people just get stuck in that groove.
Right.
Because the groove is comfortable.
Well, because I am a blacksmith. I am a carpenter. I am a machinist. And you wrap up your identity within that one word. And all of a sudden you don't know, in exact opposition to what I'm saying. When we went and toured with Scotchman, the guy that was running Scotchman, they bought the Scotchman ironworker rights from the guy that invented it because he had sold 60 of them. And he was like, well, obviously there's no more fabricators. So yeah, I'll sell it to you. They've been in business 60 more years or however long now.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was such a specific scenario that played out for them where they've been able to stay focused for that 6 years. But his problem is they already have hired the entire town. Half the town works at the hospital. The other half works at Scotchman. And that's it. And so now he's like, I'm buying robots. Like I can't not. So you walk into their facility in the middle of Philip, South Dakota, just a little podunk town. They got a cattle yard out back. We had some very mediocre biscuits and gravy. And then you walk in and it's all brand new Mazaks. Everything's automated. They're feeding pallet systems that self-regulate. The machines never turn off.
So there's a thing.
Yeah.
Robots.
Right.
Is Cole going to move into some robots? CNCs.
So probably not under my leadership, maybe after me. And I say that because I love people, and I love that people can feed their families. And I feel like that's a huge point. Now, I have been shown a very inexpensive robot that can be, the thing with the robots was, like, when I was a kid, my dad was a fabricator my whole childhood, and they bought a robot and they got a huge government contract. And then it was his job. He was the oldest fabricator there, was to run the robot. And he would come home every day, and it's like, the robot never worked. But that was 20 years ago.
Technology's evolved.
The technology now is you buy a robot and it's as simple as like, hey, robot, I need you to do that. Thanks. And it never stops.
Yes.
So there are definitely points in our process between machining. Honestly, I think it's less machining for us, and it will end up being the fabrication.
Oh, really?
The fabricating is so demanding, like you said, on the operator. I was the first one, and I loved it. And I'd buy old big grinder. I just thought it was cool. But the second that I brought somebody in, it's like, hey, yeah, you need to stand here for half an hour. I need you to remove 5 pounds of metal off of this 2-inch plate. They're like, you need me to do what now?
It is rough on the operator.
It's very rough. I mean, in the foundry world, it's the same thing. Sure. When they're de-gating the castings and stuff, that's a rough job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for your process, though, how do you handle the rough grind? Because you guys are Blanchard grinding your parts. Do you Blanchard grind all the scale and stuff off?
All of it, including the intermediate steps.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's all in the machine.
We've got 3 Blanchards.
That's cheating, Coy.
What do you mean that's cheating? There's an operator.
Where's your guy with the angle grinder?
Hey, that's too slow.
Oh my gosh,
it's too slow. Hundreds of bars a week. I mean, it's crazy. So those Blanchards. I mean, you've got one out there.
Yeah,
that's Logan's, I guess.
Yeah.
The tank where all the water's held, we have to. It fills up with sludge.
Yeah.
Above the water line, and we have to clean it out every 7 days. That's how fast they fill.
Whoa.
So one of the tools I got from Yoder was a sump sucker.
Yeah.
To vacuum all that.
Have you seen the Freddies?
No, but Logan did mention that. I was going to look.
We have one here. Funny enough, it just quit working. Oh. They're magic. Like, I can stick that into a coolant tank and suck the sludge off the bottom, and just then you flip it back and blow clean coolant right back into the tank. Right. I mean, it's like super fast. The issue we had, though, was we bought one that is like 1 gallon short of our biggest coolant tank. Yeah. And the reason we found that out was it overfilled and everywhere.
Sauced the shop.
But it's not nice. It's very sticky.
It is. It's a mess.
It's a mess. Yeah. It's probably I found a picture. I sent it to we have a group chat. I sent it, the first Fadal we bought. Somebody had filled the coolant tank with kitty litter.
Oh.
In an effort to suck up all the oil and stuff, right? Well, then they had left it there for an unknowable amount of time. And so in the video is me using one of those big floor scrapers and like
peeling
just
out
this goo, and it just rancid, like rotten organic matter. There's actually, so the GM plant here in town, there was a place called Guide Lamp. And it was such a large machining facility that they had a centralized coolant tank for like a bank of machines. So they'd have 10 huge mills with one coolant tank in the floor, like 10,000 gallon coolant tank.
Feed them all.
There is a newspaper article. Evan, will you be able to find this? The tagline is, "It came from Plant 9. They found a living being in the coolant tank. They don't know what it was."
When you say living being, you mean
like a
person?
Like a squid was alive in the coolant tank. Can you find the picture? And now there's all these like theories about
weird.
It came from Plant 9. The Plant 9 squid.
Tablet takes aim at Plant 9 squid.
So after they tore the building down, they brown zoned the whole area. So now you can't dig. It's all capped in concrete.
Right.
You can't touch the soil. Mm-hmm. That's a special kind of contaminated.
What year? When was this?
Oh, there's they closed the plant in like the 90s, I think, 80s.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was the coolant tank as I found it.
That almost looks like wet concrete.
It almost looks like oatmeal.
Or oatmeal.
Like I had some oatmeal this morning.
Ooh.
Not great.
Gross, yeah. Yeah, the guys hate cleaning out the Blanchards.
Yeah.
And because
so you got a sump sucker. That'll help.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be so much better. Because it's so hard to get under those machines.
Yeah, right.
So many little cavities and stuff.
Yep.
Cleaning them out just takes forever.
Right.
And it's very messy.
Well, and it's total loss. Like,
yeah.
You're not making anything. You're not making any money. It's just a total loss on the production. And it's necessary.
Oh, yeah.
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 So you're throwing these bars right on your Blanchard, grinding them off. So you don't even have to face the backside that goes to the magnet or anything. You can just put them right on the chuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the rolling mill gets them.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't
uniform
think about that. Yeah, you're not dealing with any kind of ridges or anything.
Well, actually, take that back. We do, because the patterned bars. So once they've been patterned,
yes,
those then they rip all the pattern off on the Blanchards too. Because we worked with Norton at getting the optimal stones that we need for our exact alloys we were using.
Yeah.
And that made a huge difference. We started out with stones that I just bought because I was like, I checked some forms, trying to figure out what to do, trying to find info on running Blanchards, and there's not a lot out there.
Industrial grinding in general is like a huge black box that nobody will talk to you about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many of these machines out there, but yet there's not a lot of info.
Right.
So I don't know why that's the case. Interesting.
I don't know either. Like when we put in a 15 horsepower, 30 by 2 snag grinder for the axe production.
Right.
And I could find literally zero information, and none of the manufacturers will talk to you because I bought it surplus. So they're like,
yeah, sure.
You're not my customer.
Exactly.
You know, so I had to guess. And I'm now too scared of it to run it, but it's fine. It's whatever.
When I talked to Norton and I got the right stones.
Yeah.
And that made a huge difference.
So how often are you replacing the stones? I mean, with that level of material remover,
about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Per set of
That's
stones.
pretty fast. But does the machine ever turn off?
No, it runs 10 hours a day every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
right.
It turns off when he needs to reload it. That's about
Robots.
Wow.
Yeah.
It'd be hard with the diversity of material, length, width, and thickness. Robots don't fit very well in my process anywhere.
Yeah.
I've looked because I think it's a cool concept.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm still on the same train with you, though, of the whole person and having an intellectual person there,
right,
and supporting your local community. We're big into that.
Of course, but the other factor is that person has a brain.
Yes,
you know, so the problem-solving capability of my team, like we as a group, are smarter than me and a bunch of robots.
Right.
That sounds terrible.
I just think the robot fits in a place where if it's a repetitive task, that's mindless,
right,
or it's a safety,
right.
Doing something
and that for us, that's welding. Because we're running 500 amps, like fumes and grinding and all of that stuff it's rough. Poor Josh out there, killing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's nowhere in our process does a robot actually fit very well.
Yep.
Everything's just too different.
You need people.
Yeah, you need people, which is fine by me. Keep the people.
Me too.
I was going to say something else with those Blanchards. I was on my train of thought, and I'm forgetting what it was. I love that machine.
Well, you were saying that you got the right stones. It totally changed the process. Before,
So they last about 2 weeks for the set of stones. Before that, we were trying some different stones. We had some stones that would last 3 days, and we had some stones that would last maybe a week.
Yeah,
and I mean, because you can't go too slow.
Right.
Like, there's a certain amount of speed you have to maintain.
Right.
If the stone's not right, the stone's going to wear too quickly.
Right.
So the stones we got are perfect, and I was telling Logan which ones they were because I think they would be great for him too.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's exactly what he's hoping to do too.
Exactly.
So are the stones hard or soft? Like, are they?
They're ceramic. They're a full ceramic stone.
So they're very hard.
They're pretty hard. Yeah, very
hard.
Wow. There's diving into hardness of stone versus hardness of what you're grinding. There's a whole gambit of scale and variance there. You know, our steel is very soft. It's in a spherical annealed state.
Yeah,
it is carbon steel, but it's spherically annealed, so it's really soft.
Yeah,
and you want harder stones, to do softer grinding.
Sure.
Harder material to grind, softer stones.
Okay.
So there's a scale there, and finding out where you're at on it. And we also have copper, which is ultra soft, in it.
Probably a whole new stone, but and then you have it's mixed with steel.
It's mixed with steel. You can't grind them separately. They're bonded together, and so. But there's a gumming factor there,
right?
To account for, and
that'll load the
yeah. There's
up.
A lot of factors.
Yeah.
But when we got the right stones, we went from grinding a table's worth of stack of steel that would take him all day, where he can have that done before lunch.
Wow.
Massive increase.
So was that just you calling your Norton rep and just saying?
Getting in touch with the Norton reps.
Yeah.
Yep. And
abrasives generally seem like the one place, abrasives and insert tooling for the mills. It's like, that's one area I just haven't been able to Google foo my way out. Like, we just need somebody that comes in and tells me what we need.
Yep.
And generally they're pretty spot on.
Yes. Like worth their weight in gold for most part.
If you a good rep is absolutely worth his weight in gold. We had a process where we were machining our punches, and they took almost 2 hours. And we were using traditional end mills. And like, it's an H13, but it's annealed H13. It's not a big deal. The biggest challenge at that point was work holding. Well, we had a rep come in and basically say, "Oh, I got that," and brought us this special high feed extended shank so he could get down to the bottom. That was the other thing, is you're machining on the bottom of a 4-inch punch. So you've got to get past it.
Right.
And so we knocked that 2 hours down. I think it's like 19 minutes. and you know, like Logan was getting all hot and bothered about 3D printing them, getting like a Maker Forge or some big industrialized version of that where we would be 3D printing the H13 and then sintering it.
Yep.
And we have one kicking around here that is a sintered 3D printed punch.
Oh, that's cool.
But $1 million machine.
Oh, yeah.
$1,000 tool.
Exactly.
I'm cheap.
Yeah. That right there.
Yeah.
Covers the rep.
Right.
Like that's
oh, absolutely. Right. Well, and the fact that, you know, the other thing is you can go to him and say, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm starting. Like, here's my starting stock. Here's all this stuff. Where should I start baseline with my feeds and speeds? Because otherwise it's just guessing. You know, my machinist has been here a long time, but it still doesn't, like, this is a weird alloy and we're work holding it in a weird way. And we're, you know, it's just like,
special application.
Help me.
Yeah.
And they do.
Right.
That's been huge for us as well.
That also kind of goes in hand with with Baker Forge, my hiring mentality was I was hiring for, initially I did everything, obviously, at day one. And then it was me and two other guys doing everything.
Right.
But then getting to where you're hiring somebody for a job to take off your load.
Right.
And I was initially offloading not one things that I didn't want to do.
Right.
Offloading things I wasn't good at.
Yeah.
Hiring specifically to cover that.
Right.
One of those early on was, of course, the social media videos and photographs, product photographs.
Yep.
I suck with that stuff. Terrible with it.
Yeah.
And so we brought on Waylon, who's doing all the media work, and you know we see massive growth in that because he's good at it.
Right.
And I wasn't. I was doing it out of necessity.
Right.
So hiring guys to not take off what you don't want to do.
Right. But what you're genuinely,
not good at.
Yeah.
What your weaknesses are.
Right.
And I have a lot of weaknesses.
Me too. So. I hired for everything, and now I just sit here.
I know that feeling.
Evan was like, "Hey, do you need to like get out of the office a little bit? The vein in the front of your forehead's popping out." It's like, no, it's fine. Just have 9 more hours of this.
Yes. I'll get in on. So we run 410s.
Okay.
So Fridays has become a maintenance day.
Yeah.
Just because all the machines are off.
Yep.
So it's a good day to do maintenance. Right. But I have access to the machines on Fridays and Saturdays. And so I am able to do a little bit of forging on my own on those times if I wanted to.
Well, yeah, you literally have everything.
Yeah.
Like right at your, I mean, it's just like, it's similar here. I can walk back in the school. I have every press, power hammer. We have power hammers on the way. It's just like, I can laser stuff.
Yeah.
The lasering stuff's been really cool. Have you utilized lasering in your processing at all?
You mean like cutting up material and stuff?
Well, like we're using lasering to do to make dies. So we're like laser milling stamps and patterns and things that would be really annoying to do on the mills.
Right.
We'll just laser it in.
Do you have an in-house laser doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, a little 60 watt. I mean, it's nothing special.
Huh. How long? Well, that's interesting. No, I currently have all my dies made at Hypercut down in Asheville, about an hour and a half from me.
Okay.
They're a big machine shop.
Yeah.
And so they make all our dies for us.
Yeah.
But I had never thought about using a laser for that.
Well, you know, especially in stamping where you have to use engraving tools in the mill and it's like, yeah, you need to run that 35,000 RPMs. Well, my mill goes 7,500 RPM. So this is going to last for 4 minutes.
Sure.
You know, it lets you get all the detail and stuff. I've just been really impressed with what we've been able to do. Cause I mean, I'm lasering H13, I'm lasering tool steel.
Interesting.
So we've been playing with that. We actually built a whole product line. We were going to let people send in their logos and stuff. And then because from the material processing side, I end up with lots of little bits of H13 and high-end tool steels. Right. And I thought, well, awesome. We'll just throw that on the website. People can order a stamp and we'll just laser it and go. Yeah. That was one of those ideas that as soon as we got started, it was like, oh, right. I will have to have a person sitting by the phone to answer the calls and explain. And then they have to tell us that the design they wanted was supposed to be this way, but they accidentally sent it this way, but just fix it for them. And it's like, oh, never mind.
Too much customer relation management.
It's a lot. And especially with our team, like our poor GM, Francis, is right now he's running shipping, paint, production scheduling, you know, any HR stuff gets handled through him, time off slips. I got a guy. A poor soul.
I need an HR guy because I'm tired of doing the HR part.
I'm not good at it.
Me either.
I'm too empathetic. And so I'll like sit with people for hours and just like talk through problems. And then they walk out and it's like, oh, wait, we forgot to solve any of that. So
right, we forgot you're fired.
By the way, you're now a customer. Yeah. We have a Lily. She was just here a minute ago, a little 5 foot, and she is frickin' feisty. Like she loves to write people up. Oh. So it's like, you need to find a Lily.
I need a Lily
for sure. There was a side bit of a side tangent. When we were looking for a new house, one of the houses that we looked at was the Whitehall estate. So Whitehall is just down the road here. So Anderson was known for its natural gas reserves, and Whitehall was something I don't remember. Do you remember what he was? Anyway, he was a huge factory owner in town, and so he built this estate on the edge of town to bring his guests. At the time, Anderson had such massive natural gas deposits that they just opened like a 6-inch port in the middle of the river and lit it on fire. And you could see it from Indianapolis.
No kidding.
Funny story though, we ran out of natural gas. But he built this place to like schmooze his customers or potential customers and stuff. So it's I think it's like 19,000 square feet, 29 bedrooms, has a all mahogany handmade bowling alley in the basement. It's dope. And it was in my price range. And now someone else named Lily lives there. So what's up?
It's
freaking cool. Show the 6 beds. Where I get 20? I think it's 29 rooms in the house. But it's like
19,000 square feet.
It's super dope.
That was a really red couch a minute ago. That was a crazy red couch.
What if there's no red couch?
There is right there.
Right there. There is. In the library. With the candlestick. 2 kitchens.
What in the world would you do with a house that size?
Have so many kids.
Yeah.
So many kids. Have everybody I know live with me and charge them rent.
Doing that anyway.
Well, I think I'm good with 5. I think 5 is probably my number.
There are so many. Wow, I cannot find the bowling alley.
That's what I'm telling you. It was amazing. There's a separate guest house out front.
Is real estate just that cheap?
There it is. No,
that's not.
Well, it was. Also, interest rates when I bought a house were 2%. So. Yeah.
That's a lot of house for that.
Well, so in just north of here in Alexandria was the Kelly Axe and Tool Factory, and at the time though it was like American Axe and Hoe or something. It was the largest axe manufacturing in the world, like in one factory, and then it burned down shortly after the natural gas ran out. So
interesting.
Got that insurance money.
Yes, inside insurance job.
Any hoozle. Fun turn of the century fraud.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this up. This has been really fun.
Oh yeah.
Do you have, what are the places that people can see what Baker Forge and Tool is doing? What's your primo?
So to see what we're doing, probably the biggest one is hit up Instagram.
Okay.
Put a lot of content out there, short form, photos and stuff like that. So that's just Baker Forge and Tool on Instagram. BakerForge.com is our website. You can hit that up to find any of our products. All of our in-stock steels are listed there. Our Gator Piss etchant. Are we allowed? I mean, that's a brand. Okay. I actually have yeah. Anyway, I got a trademark on that. So
very cool.
Yeah. So, and then of course we're on all the socials.
Yeah.
Facebook, TikTok, which we don't go on, or we don't do a whole lot. We post there, cross post, but
yeah,
you can find us anywhere.
Very cool.
Yeah, I got a personal Instagram page too, Bearded Steel Wizard, where some people can see. I put like some behind the scenes stuff on there from time to time, just to kind of break it up.
Yeah,
because so I have a media guy, Waylon, who's at the shop in person.
Yeah,
and my social media, the marketing manager, is John, and he actually lives in Montana. He's a remote employee.
Yeah.
And he runs all the marketing back end.
Yeah.
And where was I going with this?
I don't know.
Bragging about having 2 marketing employees.
No. It was it's the website. So, or the Instagram page. The main Baker Forge page used to be just covered in customer photos and random whatever I'm doing. I took a photo on my iPhone of something, and they've made it much more professional, and it's all nice and clean cut.
Yep.
Yeah. So the crazy stuff happens on my side page, if there is any crazy stuff.
So that's where we can see the cool power hammers in action and all that.
Yeah. Well, you can see the power hammers in action on the page. They like to showcase that.
What about that? Did you sell that Bradley already?
Yeah.
Bradley's really sad.
Sorry.
Do you have another one?
No.
So we were at Warwood, and that was my first time using a Hellfhamer and 100-pound Bradley. I thought, that'll be cool, right? 300 beats per minute or 330. Flattened a 1x2 billet into a bit, like maybe, I don't know, 1/8 inch in like 10 seconds. And somewhere on the internet, there's a video of me pulling the stock out and like freaking out because I couldn't believe it. I was so impressed. I walked up to Chris, the owner, and I was like, I want that. Will you sell that to me?
How much?
And he's like, no, that's been there for 120 years. Like, you're not getting that.
You're not getting that.
They have a 100 and a 200 pound. What was yours? Yours
150.
was a 150. See, that's like the
sweet spot.
It's a little bit more.
It didn't have enough throw for us. Not enough daylight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because your starting stock size?
Starting stacks were too tall.
Yeah,
I mean, we could get it under there, but the hammer was just boom.
Right, it needs throw.
It needs throw.
Yeah, right.
It needs the inertia. So I got it on a great deal.
Yeah.
Back when I was a lot, smaller company size, and I actually at the time didn't even really need it.
Yeah.
But just love power hammers and didn't want to pass it up.
Amen,
snagged it. It's freshly restored by Chris Cash, Mount Phillip Metalworks.
Yeah.
So, didn't really want to let that go, but I needed to put a different hammer in its spot.
Yep.
The same 750 Chambersburg is sitting where it was sitting now.
That's a monster.
Yeah.
We have so Kurt Fehrenbach lives over in Atlanta.
I found it.
He's got, I don't know that that's the video. That's the hammer. Yes.
It's a video.
His family was involved in the steel mills, and they were part of founding Fountain Forge, which Fountain Forge, we need to go back. They just have in their front yard like a 6,000-pound double arch hammer, 1,000-pound single arch steam hammer, a 3,000-pound double arch steam hammer, just sitting there in case one of their.
What are they making?
They just do forgings. That's all they do.
Raw forgings.
Just
forgings,
like aircraft aviation, like can't take a picture in the facility even of the bare raw material.
Spaceship stuff.
And so that's their fleet that's just sitting in the yard. Still run off of steam, 200-pound steam boiler running, or 200 horsepower. That's their. So that was a 1,500-pound that they have welded 1,500 more pounds of material onto to make it a 3,000-pound ram.
That's one way to do it.
That's one way to do it. And they've got a super crazy story. So it's been founded and blah, blah, blah. Norbert, who is an immigrant from Colombia, sold his very successful aviation machining company in Colombia to come to America and save industry. So he moved here, bought Fountain Forge, and is just like totally revamping it, putting in machining. Like, it was the whole time. We didn't video any of it because we couldn't show anything. Yeah. I was just sitting there talking to him, like vibrating. Just the energy off this man was like. So we'll go back maybe when they're not forging something super, super special.
Super cool.
Anyway, all right, let's wrap it up there. Yeah, Coy, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us. I really appreciate it. Of course.
It's been a great
always.
time. Yep.
All right, guys. Signing off.
Peace.
Thanks for listening. How long was it? I'm going to guess. 1 hour and 24 minutes.
1 hour and 34 minutes.
Oh, I was
10 minutes off. That's all it took. 10 minutes.
How was that? Was that
phenomenal?